I'd like to call to order this committee of whole meeting for the town of Saugeen Shores and extend a welcome to everyone in the council chambers this evening. The first order of business is a declaration of pecuniary interest, and I'll remind every member of your responsibility. This evening we have no deputations, and we have the first order of business then on the agenda is the general government staff report. It has to do with our 2014 financial statements, and I believe Kate, our director, is going to begin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Everyone has a draft copy of the financials in their package. These are the consolidated financial statements, so they include not only the operations of the town, but also Basra and the Smart Transit organization. Overall, there was an increase in the accumulated surplus of approximately $2.4 million in 2013. And Mike Bolton is here to give us a presentation and walk through the statements, so I'll pass things over to him.
Very good. Thank you, Kate. I was told to keep this short, so what she said, and then I can go, right? Yeah. Thank you for allowing me to attend the meeting tonight. I'm going to go over the financial statement. As Kate has mentioned, they were part of the draft package that was sent out. I'm actually going to talk about the 2013 financial statement. I'm not good enough to predict what's going to happen a year from now, so I'm going to talk about 2013. So part of the package that you have is our independent auditor's report, and I thought I would start with that. And it's our report to the members of council and also the ratepayers and the inhabitants of the corporation of the town of Saugeen Shores. And it breaks down who's responsible for what in this whole process of putting together the financial statement. Your management is responsible for keeping the books and the records. They do all the deposits, cut all the checks, ensure that there are sufficient internal controls in place to safeguard the assets. And they're responsible for the preparation of these financial statements that I'm going to talk about in a minute. Our responsibility as auditors is to express an opinion. So we don't give a guarantee, we express an opinion based on the sample of things that we look at over our audit process. We express an opinion about whether these financial statements are in accordance with the appropriate accounting principles. And you, like all other municipalities and all other government organizations, follow public sector body accounting principles. So if you took these and tried to compare them to another for-profit organizations, it wouldn't make sense. The presentation is different. But if you took these financial statements and compared them to any other municipality across Canada or any other upper tier, provincial, federal, hospital, the presentation here would be the same. So, and what you have before you is called a clean auditor's report. We didn't have any trouble in completing our audit. We were able to satisfy ourselves that these financial statements are presented in accordance with the appropriate accounting principles. And some of the things that I need to disclose as part of our audit is that we are independent from the town in doing our audit. We're required to be independent, which means nobody who is working on our audit has any family members that work in the municipality in the financial sector. So that I need to disclose. Also, no matter how good, how excellent the staff are, there are errors in the financial statement, and we audit to something called materiality. So we don't look at every single transaction. We select a sample based on what we think would change your decisions about how the municipality runs. And the materiality level that we have chosen is around $500,000, and that's consistent with what we have done in the past. So if there was one error or an accumulation of errors of more than $500,000, we would say to management, you need to adjust that or we can't give a clean report. We'd given a clean report. The only errors that we identified were about $32,000. So very small amount of errors, and there was really only 3 that totaled that. So given that level of error and our materiality level, we give the clean auditor's report. So now I'll talk about some of the numbers. I won't dwell on all of them, but I thought I'd start with the statement of financial position, which is on page 5 of the package that you were given. As Kate had mentioned before, this is not only the information for the municipality, but also all the boards that you look after or are part of a joint board. So BASRA, SMART, the BIA, and the Airport Management Committee, those numbers are all pulled together and form part of this presentation. So this is not only just the town accounts. So cash in the bank at the end of December was about $12,000, which is up $1.5 million from what it was a year before. Did I say 12,000? 12 million. 12 million. Thanks, Don. Sorry. $12 million. Taxes receivable are just over $1.1 million, and a year ago they were about $1.2 million. So you have less in taxes receivable. You collected more of the current levy and what was in arrears. One of the percentages that is generally of interest to council is the percentage of the current levy that is in taxes receivable is about 4.8%. What it was a year ago was 5.3%. So you collected more than you had in the past, and that's the reason that taxes receivable are down. Your total net financial assets are $4.7 million, and a year ago they were $3.9. So you have more in the bank, you have more available for future operations than you had at the same point last year. But I should mention, and that number is positive, so that means you have more in assets, financial assets, than you do in liabilities, including long-term debt. So if you look at what you had in the bank, taxes receivable, other receivables, they total about $25 million, and you owed in long-term debt, accounts payable, etc., about $20 million. So you have about $5 million surplus of funds. Some municipalities, that net financial asset number is negative. If you spend a whole pile on capital assets and funded it with long-term debt, the capital assets show up below the line and the debt shows up above the line. So you're in good position in terms of having net financial assets. What I would bring to your attention, though, of that $4.7 million in net financial assets, 7.6 of that is represented by your investment in Westario Power. So in order to realize that, you'd have to sell your investment in Westario Power to actually get that net financial asset. That's really the only one that's maybe not as liquid as the other ones. Non-financial assets, by far the biggest number on the balance sheet is the tangible capital assets. That was a change a number of years ago where we started booking tangible capital assets, being your linear assets, roads, sewers, etc., and those get depreciated over time. One item I should talk about for 2012, when we were doing the 2013 audit, it was noted that some of the tangible capital assets had actually been booked twice in 2012. And that was a matter, there were some subdivisions that were recorded in 2009 when tangible capital assets first came in, and those were assumed by the municipality in 2012 and they were counted again. That wasn't recognized till 2013, so the 2012 numbers have actually been restated to remove that double counting of those assets, which was about $1.2 million. Again, on $156 million of tangible capital assets, 1.2 isn't a very big number, but it is greater than our threshold of 500,000, so that's why the adjustment was made to go back and change the prior year numbers. That's all I want to talk about in the statement of financial positions. The statement of operations is on page number 6, and it compares your current budget, the 2013 budget, to the actual, which is the middle column of that page, versus what was in the 2012 actual numbers. I won't go through each one of those. Your budgeted revenue was just over $27 million. Revenue actually raised was $27.5 million, so you're up about $400,000 over budget. Your expenses were $24.8 million, and actually spent was $25.1, so you're about $300,000 over budget in expenses. Keep in mind that that budget number and those actuals include BASRA, SMART, etc. So it's a combination of all those things. So your annual surplus for the year is about $2.4 million. The annual surplus budgeted was to about 2.2, so you actually had an annual surplus $100,000 higher than what was budgeted. I want to sort of skip a whole bunch of pages and go to note number 8, which is, if you have the statement in front of you, is on page 19. I'll give you a minute to find it if you're looking for it. So at the bottom, the page numbers are at the bottom right-hand corner, and the one I want to look at is note number 8, which is entitled Accumulated Surplus. So your total surplus is about $163 million. However, $158,000 of that is tangible capital assets, so you can't spend your tangible capital assets. So that leaves about $5 million. And I mentioned that your Westario investment was about $7 million. So you take the 7 off the 5, you actually go to -2 in terms of the accumulated surplus that's maybe available to spend. You do have reserves of about $19 million, and that $19 million is roughly the same as what it was a year ago. You didn't add to your reserves, you didn't draw from your reserves, it's almost exactly the same as what it was. And the next note, note number 9 on that same page, summarizes where those reserves are held. Of that $19 million, $17 million is for capital purposes. Again, didn't change a whole lot year over year, didn't add anything, didn't subtract anything. I usually get the question, is 19 million enough? And I'll defer that to staff to determine, what are we expecting to do in the next 5 years and where the funding from that is going to come. So it hasn't increased, but it hasn't decreased. If it was enough a year ago and you don't have a lot of capital things planned, it's maybe still enough. And the final note that I want to talk about is note number 14, which is on page number 23. And the budget number as compared to the actual, I just wanted to talk briefly about how did we get from what you budgeted at the beginning of the year to where we actually got. And note number 14 does that reconciliation. So I'll talk about the left-hand column, which is the 2013 budget. Your budgeted surplus was $2.2 million. You expected to spend $11 million on capital assets during the year and take amortization of $6 million, and you predicted that you'd have to draw from your reserves about $3.6 million to come to a zero at the end. What actually happened for 2013 is your annual surplus was $100,000 more than what you budgeted, $2.388 million. You only spent $7.7 million on capital assets. Your amortization was just about on budget, and you drew from your reserves $74,000. So where you predicted you were going to draw $3 million, you only drew $74,000. But keep in mind, you didn't spend nearly what you predicted on capital assets. So I don't think you can say, oh, we did a lot better because we didn't draw from reserves. You just didn't spend it on capital was the only reason for that. So your general surplus at the end of the year, just over $500,000, is the same as what it was the previous year. I think that's the end of my comments, Mr. Mayor, but I'd be glad to entertain questions if there were any.
Thanks very much, Mike. Any questions or comments for Councilor Legault?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Mike, for the presentation. The tangible capital assets, it went up in 2013 by about 1.8 or $1.6 million. What's that a result of, Mike? Is that investment in infrastructure?
Yep. So I mentioned that you added or spent about $7.7 million on putting stuff in the ground or buying trucks or whatever it was, and then amortization was taken of about $6 million or so.
Right.
The difference is what falls to the tangible capital asset net book value at the end of the year.
Okay.
Does that answer the question?
Yep,
okay.
It does. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for the presentation. Mike, I had a question about note number 10. It was kind of a number jumped out at me. The donations line was budgeted $260,000 and actually got $2.5 million in donations. So I'd just like to know who to thank for the donation. What happened there?
Yep. If you're following along on page 20, note number 10 talks about other income. And you're exactly right. The budgeted number at the beginning of the year was just a couple $100,000, and the donation line shows as $2.5 million. When a developer completes a subdivision or any capital asset and turns it over to the town, that counts as a donation. So it gets added to tangible capital assets. It wasn't cash you got. It gets added to tangible capital assets and shows up as donation revenue. And that number was $2.2 million of capital assets were donated or assumed by the town. So of that 2.5, 2.2 was assets, and about 300,000 would be cash.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's sad. But
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Not really a contribution. It's a long-term liability. Vice Deputy Mayor Godlock
I'm on? You're on. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Mike. Good presentation. Same question I probably asked you last time, and it has to do with post-employment benefits, pension plan, OMERS. Certainly OMERS has increased the draw from our employees and certainly from us in order to deal with the deficit, which is substantial. Do you have a feel for how that's working? I know it's an unfair question to you, but will OMERS be able to continue into the future offering the same benefit as they have in the past? Is that going to happen, or do we have to be concerned about that?
Yep. Fair question. And if, again, you're following along, on page 22, note number 13 talks about OMERS pension. There's some disclosure in there about what we were able to glean from the OMERS annual report. And what they've done is the deficit at the beginning of the year was about 9.9 billion, so they were underfunded by 9.9 billion. They were able to reduce that to 8.6 billion, so they were able to claw back. But the way they did that was they increased the contribution rates from 8.3% to 9% on employees and municipalities. So it wasn't maybe that they did a whole lot better on the investment returns; they just took more from the plan sponsors. Is it sustainable? Any pension plan is probably going to be underfunded. If you look, their total liabilities are about $73 billion, and they're underfunded by $8 billion, so a little more than 10%. They're not as bad off as some other pension plans, which might only be 60% funded or something like that. So I would suspect that, now having said that, in the next 10 years, there's going to be a big chunk of people retiring. And I guess, is it sustainable? No, they'd have to catch up eventually, but it's a long-term, long-tailed thing that they have to fund. So I don't expect rates to go up a whole bunch, but they might creep up. But that is one of the risks that you face is these benefits that are promised to employees, whether it's sick leave or the health and dental premiums you agree to pay for employees to age 65 or OMERS pension. All that stuff is going to be going up.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the taxpayer pays for that, and
Yep.
I guess that's why I asked the question. So
Yep.
thanks for the answer, Mike.
Yep. Wasn't a very good answer, Doug. Sorry.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Any further questions? No? I just got a comment. I really enjoy when you come each year, Mike, because we kind of get caught up on day-to-day things and projects, and when you get a look at overall the financial situation of the corporation, it's kind of reassuring to say that we're still in very good financial situation. Yep. And nice that you come and tell us that. So I appreciate it.
Very good.
So there is a recommendation then, and I'll read it, and the recommendation is that Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores accepts the 2013 annual audited financial statements as presented by Michael Bolton of BDO Dunwoody. Questions or comments? That all in favor of that? That's carried. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is an Environmental Services and Transportation Staff report. It has to do with the traffic bylaw, and our Director of Public Works, Stuart Doyle, will present.
Thank you. Excuse me. The town's traffic bylaw is, I think, attached here as in a draft here. This bylaw regulates much of the traffic infrastructure in the municipality, with several new subdivisions being added to the municipal road inventory. Since its last update, a minor revision was needed to add the new stop sign control devices to the schedules. You'll see the updates, and certainly you can ask any questions on those as when I'm finished here. There's updates to Schedule C, D, G, and H, and a small one to K as well. We also looked at some other considerations as part of this update. Speed changes on the River Road. We sent out a questionnaire. As it notes, we had some mixed response, 15 response, so at this time we're not proposing to make any changes. Another comment that was received was speed reduction to 40 kilometers an hour in Port Elgin. Currently, the traffic bylaw stipulates that unless otherwise posted, within the boundaries of Port Elgin, the posted limit is 50 kilometers an hour, and Southampton it's 40. This change would also make the speed limits within both urban areas of Saugeen Shores consistent. Staff will pursue reviewing this option and solicit public input at a later date. Third point, staff in conjunction with the traffic engineer is currently reviewing traffic movements and patterns in proximity to the new developments along Albert Street in Southampton to determine possible changes. Future information will also be brought forward when available.
Thank you, Stuart. There's a recommendation, and it is that Council authorizes an amendment to Bylaw 103-2008 at the next Council meeting. Questions or comments to this, Councillor Huber?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Stuart, I realize this is just an amendment which picked up some housekeeping things, but the comment about the review related to Albert Street with the development, I was anticipating that there would have been a comment here about the situation with Grosvenor and Adelaide and Emerald Drive in Adelaide. There's because as soon as Adelaide's opened up, there's going to be some issues because there's two streets very close together and the stop signs are kind of out of whack and one of them's not visible. So should we anticipate that that's coming too?
Yeah, that was kind of that comment there, that we're looking at that whole area in general, being the highway, being Adelaide, and that area.
Well, it's just that it says Albert Street, and so just that Adelaide's going to get picked up. I also just wanted to ask. We had a deputation a couple of weeks ago, and the situation on High Street was discussed, and it had to do with some difficult intersections, and we did have a very limited discussion about the High and Huron intersection being a three-way as opposed to a four-way stop, and also the potential maybe for Victoria Street and High Street to become possibly a four-way stop as well. I'm just curious, how does that fit into some planning or discussion or public input or whatever?
Yep. So we actually met with that fella who did the deputation last week. Had a good discussion with him on site at several of those locations. What I said to him about Victoria, Grosvenor, and Huron is that we need to do some stop sign warrant calculations there, and that putting so many four-way stops on a collector road isn't our normal practice, but that we'll certainly look into them. So hopefully that answers your questions. Usually I don't do the warrant calculations till summer when we get peak traffic.
Okay. High Street is a collector road, or are you talking about the Grosvenor and Victoria?
Right, so High Street east-west as it intersects with Huron, Grosvenor, and Victoria.
Okay.
There's no stop signs currently on High Street other than the three-way stop you mentioned at Huron.
Yeah, down at Huron.
So we're looking at those intersections. We'll do warrant calculations on them, get traffic patterns, look at collision data, and that type of thing in the summer months.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Stu, I was just wondering with regard to Schedule K, the addition of short-form wording for depositing debris, snow, ice on public highway, is that a new fine, or is it how are we altering, what are we doing there to alter the bylaw?
So I'll answer as best I can. If I'm in error, Linda will likely correct me. It's currently in the bylaw. It's currently not finable through the bylaw. It is through the Highway Traffic Act. So this allows our bylaw officer to lay a ticket for that offense.
Okay, and is the fine similar to what's in the Highway Traffic Act? Or?
I'm not sure. It is.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further? All in favor of the recommendation, then? That's carried. The next item on the agenda is Environmental Services and Transportation Staff Report, and has to do with Highway 21 storm sewer, and again, Stuart will present.
Thank you. In 2009, the town of Saugeen Shores received Connecting Link funding from the MTO to complete upgrades to the Goddard Street from Tomlinson to Concession 10. The project was to widen the traveled surface to 4 lanes with turning lanes and upgrade the area with storm sewer infrastructure with curbs and storm sewer. The limits of construction extended beyond the town's jurisdiction of Goddard Street within the confines of the Connecting Link to the King's Highway system, where MTO has jurisdiction on all matters. Where the town is full authority, that section was constructed to normal town standards of urban cross-section, including storm sewers, to prepare for future signal lights. The Kings Highway section was designed and constructed within the MTO's current construction practices and was accepted by the MTO. Due to the road widening and the merger with the existing two-lane cross-section north of Concession 10, lengthy taper lanes were required to successfully integrate the different road widths based on the 90 km/h design speed requirements of the MTO. The road widening resulted in reduced cross-sectional widths for ditches on the east and west side of the road, and thus new ditches were designed to accept the required flow. The original design was constructed includes two cross culverts to convey surface water from the east side to the west side to facilitate improved drainage conditions for the lands on the east side of the highway. Although the town, Gansby Manero, our consulting engineer on this project, and MTO agree that the newly constructed ditch system is adequate and provides an acceptable level of service, and in some cases enhanced for several properties, there are some concerns with the current system. The edge of the system is directly on the limits of the MTO property. Right-of-way constraints within the open ditch has triggered some encroachments that can be rectified, however may cause additional operational and maintenance issues for the MTO. Without careful monitoring in winter storm events, the open ditch may be blocked by snow and ice and has potential to cause water to back up and overflow the banks. Maintenance difficulties, poor aesthetics, and concerns from adjacent property owners. From the inception of the project, the town staff have preferred a closed system, but have been steered away from it due to the standard policy of the MTO. Because this section is not connecting link, the MTO has the final say. Since 2009, staff have been working with adjacent landowners on several issues relating to the open ditches and the issues they may have. Concerns from landowners from both sides of the highway have been raised, and a resolution has been elusive based on the current MTO policy. Staff's intention are not to discredit the policy, as it served well in their jurisdiction, what is being considered though as an exception to the rule in this unique area. Staff's request to have the exemption is based on increased protection to adjacent landowners, increased level of service, improved aesthetics, and possible future groundwork for a secondary trail. Town staff have developed three alternatives for a closed system on the west side of the highway. Each option would require land acquisition. Based on the recommendation from council, staff will forward the MTO the preferred design for consultation.
Thank you, Stuart. And the recommendation is that council pass a resolution requesting the MTO to make an exemption from their standard policy to accommodate a closed storm sewer system on Highway 21 directly north of Concession 10. Questions, comments? Vice Deputy Mayor Gallagher.
Just a comment, Mr. Mayor. We've had a number of meetings on this issue, and it seems to me that there is an opportunity to, particularly if we have some funding available, to do a way better job than what's being proposed. And I think we have to start somewhere in a letter to the MTO saying, here's what we want to do and here's why, as I think an appropriate start. And I say that because Highway 21 is a long road, and if you drive down it and take a look at some other municipalities, there's certainly been some services put underground in certain areas. And I see no reason why that shouldn't be able to happen here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Hubert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Stuart, from your report, the last comment about how we currently have funds available, can I read into what it says that the funds that are available are provincial funds that came in for something and we just didn't use them? Are those the funds that are available? Okay, thank you.
Councillor Seaman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The west side of the highway only, is this to facilitate maybe a trail at some point in time, or did you consider the east side as well?
The east side has some other issues with the outlet on the northeast corner of Highway 21 Concession 10. It's not quite low enough. Certainly a trail is one of the positives that could come out of it, but wasn't definitely a design factor.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment. I just want to commend staff for the work that they've done on this. I think that, as much as this is a shared piece of infrastructure between the town of Saugeen Shores and the province of Ontario, at that intersection, it feels like the town of Saugeen Shores is doing the bulk of the heavy lifting making sure that this infrastructure works for the neighboring property owners in that territory. And frankly, it's a bit of a shame that it has to come to this, where council has to get involved in issuing a statement on this subject, so as to put some pressure on the MTO to do what is in effect the right thing. But it seems to be an ongoing trend with the MTO on work on their chunk of highway within our municipality. So, but I do want to thank Stuart and his colleagues who have been working on this for a number of years and have come up with this option and are now pushing this option. And I'm hopeful that council's intervention here will see it gets done. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anything further? All in favor of the recommendation? That's carried. The next item on the agenda is a Community Services Parks and Recreation staff report, and it has to do with a lease agreement for the canteen services, and our Director of Community Services, Jane, will present.
Thank you. In August 2013, Tom and Nadine Montgomery resumed the operations of the canteen services at the Community Complex and the Coliseum. The initial term of the lease expires this August, and previous to this agreement, the canteen was under the management of minor hockey. The Montgomerys have worked closely with the users of both facilities to assist them with fundraising efforts and attempt to increase customers to the canteens. They've increased their hours of operation from the previous tenant in an effort to increase their sales. Unfortunately, patrons entering the facilities continue to bring products purchased from other locations into the municipal facilities while watching sporting events. Obviously, this impacts potential revenue generated. The Montgomerys realize that it may take a couple of years for patrons to appreciate the services that the canteen provides, and have been somewhat frustrated with the lack of business that they've experienced this past season, as well as the addition of the Winterhawks ending their season early. Currently, the fee is $5,000 annually. Based on discussion with the tenant, staff is suggesting that the agreement be renewed for an additional 5-year term, and that the annual lease be established at $3,000 annually with an escalated clause tied to the CPI. This will assist the Montgomerys in continuing to grow their business and at the same time provide a valuable service within the municipal facilities. The future year's fees received will continue to be in excess of those paid by the previous operator. Staff has worked closely with the Montgomerys in assisting them to increase their business and will continue to provide suggestions on the overall operations.
Thank you, Jane. The recommendation is that the lease agreement between the town of Saugeen Shores and Tom and Nadine Montgomery for the concession operations for Saugeen Shores Community Complex and the Southampton Coliseum be renewed for a 5-year term expiring in 2019. I'll start with Vice Deputy Mayor Gonlock.
I guess my concern is that we had put the canteen out for tender, and now we're changing the terms of the lease for the person who won the tender, and I'm just wondering if that's fair to those other individuals who were interested in that providing that service, Jane. I guess you can comment on that or not, but that would be my concern. Is somebody's going to say, well, hey, that's not fair.
The $3,000 suggested annual lease still excels the previous other individual that applied to be a part of the RFP. So it still is higher than their previous bid.
Okay. Councillor Huber. Oh, are you done, Doug? You finished? Councillor Huber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I realize that there would be some difficulty with posting the signs we see elsewhere that say, no outside food or whatever, but is there some way to publicize or promote, I don't know, via, heaven forbid I ask for another sign, but you've got a comment in here about the Montgomerys have worked with groups to help with their fundraising efforts, so they're contributing to the success of others. So is there some way to somehow get that message out via something in both the Plex and the Coliseum, so that there starts to be a recognition that your cup of coffee leads to a lot of other things?
Yeah,
is that a possibility at all?
Certainly, and we met with Montgomerys after the winter season, the hockey season, I'll say. And we, as staff, weren't aware that they were working so closely with some of these groups, and we've provided some of our resources to assist them in promoting their operations. We've provided them with some possible alternatives or solutions on trying to get people to purchase product here as opposed to outside as well. So we've offered our resources to assist with marketing too, and posters and anything that we can do to continue to keep them in the facilities, because really it's not something that community services should be running themselves. It should be someone from the community. So we certainly will continue to work with them.
Councillor Seaman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to follow up on Councillor Huber's comment, can we not post a sign on the door, no outside food or beverage? Can we not legally do that?
Well, we can. It comes down to monitoring it as well, and it's certainly something that I've spoken with counterparts from other facilities in other communities to see how they manage it. They all thought it was a good idea, however, no other community has done that. We can certainly post it, but again, how do we monitor it? Because we certainly don't have the resources to monitor it.
Thank you.
I think one of the issues, maybe not so much with this one, but there's always these terms of these leases, say 5 years. I mean, when you have a business, it's hard to, I think 5 years is probably fair, but it's hard to have a business plan if you're not sure that you're going to have the facility after 3 or 4 or 5 years. And I think I think the 5 years in this case is probably pretty adequate, but we've got other facilities. I think that sometimes 5 years is in my mind pretty short when you're trying to put a business plan together and hope to invest in that business. So just a comment. And maybe when some of those other leases come up, we can have that discussion. But in any case, all in favor of the recommendation? That's carried. The next item on the agenda is the Community Services Parks and Recreation Staff Report, and it has to do with public facilities naming policy. And again, our Director of Community Services, Jane, will present.
As Saugeen Shores continues to develop new parks, trails, gardens, and facilities, the need to have a structured process of developing a naming procedure is required to ensure consistency and accuracy. Facilities referred to in the attached policy are applicable parkland and open space, community centers with rooms within, multiple use trails, recreation fields, cultural venues, community gardens, fire departments, stormwater management ponds, and other significant public-owned features. Staff recognizes the need to ensure suitable names are provided for facilities. However, being cognizant of fundraising campaigns that will provide naming prospects based on pre-approved giving opportunities that will not fall within this policy. The Public Facilities Naming Policy identifies naming guidelines that recognizes what is eligible for naming rights and what is not, such as geographic proximity, historical event, or recognition of an individual, family, or an object. Emphasis is placed on the provision of obtaining community input in the initial stages, then a selection process involving an internal staff team, and if required, the applicable advisory committee based on the nature of the project. Staff will present the preferred name to Council for final approval. Although the renaming of existing parks is seldom exercised, the policy identifies that only parks and facilities named for geographic location, outstanding feature, or subdivision should be considered for renaming. Any renaming of facilities shall be at the sole discretion of Council. Staff has reviewed this policy with the Parks and Trails Advisory Committee, and they are satisfied with the proposed recommendation.
Thank you, Jean. And the recommendation is that Council approves the public facilities naming policy as presented. Comments? Questions? All in favor? That's carried. That's the end of our agenda, other than there's a couple items for Council's information there, as you are aware, I'm sure. So we'll start for good of Council and with Councillor Frost.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let's see, on June 11th we had, I think it was an airport meeting, and we're starting to meet now at the airport, and they're getting ready for their deck and the accessible deck, which is kind of a neat idea. And we talked about the functions that they're going to be running over this year, and the Bell Mobility Tower, cell tower is coming along quite nicely there, so they'll actually be in a better revenue position for Council to deliberate over their funding requirements this year. 13th, along with you, was at the Relay for Life. It was, I found it quite brisk and cool that night, and I didn't see that it was as big as it had been in the past. Now the numbers of the report seem to be that it was good, so maybe after I chickened out and went home that there was more that showed up and it got a little bit busier, but I was happy to see what was there, and it was another good event at Noddwell. I enjoyed that. The only other thing I want to mention is on the 19th, I attended the rail trail crossing meeting, and it was a lot of stakeholders from town, and it was a very productive meeting. Of course, there's still no answers from MTO on anything we're allowed to do, but the group came up with some great ideas, and I think we can move forward with some of that stuff. We'll either this council possibly might see it, or the next council for sure will see some things come forward. And that's about what I have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Huber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last Wednesday, I went to the afternoon session for the streetscape downtown planning for Southampton. I look forward to seeing what comes of that. I don't know, our tables seem to have a lot of discussion. I don't think we came to any resolution, so I'm hopeful that the consultant was able to grab something from everybody and put it together, and I hope the evening session was well attended too. I just want to note one event coming up this weekend that starts on Friday, which heads into the Canada Day stuff in Southampton. The Friends of the Southampton Library is going through a transition because the library itself across Bruce County is transitioning, and the Friends of Library branches are having to sort of adjust and work towards what the library is becoming, and it's an interesting process. Anyway, the Friends of the Southampton Library annual book sale is starting this Friday. It goes Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, and we're calling it the Really Big Book Sale. It may very well be the last one we ever have, but so it's going to be in the Boathouse, and it will be the Really Big Book Sale. So come out Friday night 6 till 8, and then the other 4 days it's 9 till 1 o'clock. Canada Day, though, there'll be lots of stuff in downtown Southampton, of course, culminating with the fireworks down at the Flag. So if you don't have anything to do, come to the book sale, then hit the town hall for all the art gallery, art school stuff, and I'm sure there's a barbecue going on somewhere, and just shop, stroll, whatever, and then hit the fireworks at night. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Schubert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a reminder that Canada Day's coming up, of course, and the Saugeen Rail Trail is again hosting an annual event on Saturday the 28th of June. It's from 10 till noon, and there's lots of prizes donated by local merchants, so the invitation's been extended again to come out and participate in that event. And it's at the, thanks, Councillor Huber, it's at the Port Elgin Rotary Trailhead on River Street. And there's been a few changes up there again this year with some additional trees. There's some good fencing now that maybe people don't realize, a living fence, I guess, for lack of a better word. Great area, great improvements, and that organization is a great community partner and has been very successful in improving that area greatly over the last few years. So come on out and enjoy the celebration. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Red. Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a thank you to Stuart and his guys. You've got the calcium on almost all of the rural dusty roads. I think. Are there any left? Okay. Anyway, but it makes a huge difference, and we had rain at the right time, and it's certainly helping. I think it will keep some cars clean for a while. Anyway, thanks, Stuart. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Stuart. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was also at the airport meeting with Councillor Frost. I think we're becoming more progressive than we have in the past. I'm quite pleased with the way it's going. Look forward to what's happening. And the Little Ferry Lake area, new build down there is looking absolutely fantastic. I think the town and everybody else did a great job, and I think it's going to be an enjoyable part of Southampton. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks. Good. Councillor Seaman.
Nothing this evening, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple things. I got an update from Jill Root today on some interesting things that are happening with doctors. I'd like to welcome 2 new doctors to the area. Dr. Bikaziak and Dr. Gleba. So if you see the doctors out there on the street, please make them feel at home and welcome to our community. There's some Ministry of Health issues that they still have to clear, but they're both going to be setting up practice, one in Southampton and one in Port Elgin. I also attended the meeting in Southampton on Streetscape. I went to the early meeting that was put on, and there was some interesting discussion. The consultants had put together a couple plans for us to have a look at, and some interesting talk about how we restructure High Street and the parking that's involved there without actually losing parking spaces, but getting creative and looking at some bump outs and adding some more greenery to the downtown core. So, and I found that the people who were there had some great ideas too. So we got some good feedback back to the consultants, and hopefully the second meeting went well as well, and we'll get some more feedback once we go to the next level. And I also attended the highway crossing meeting that we had on the 19th. And just like to thank the stakeholders that came out for that. I thought there was some great input there, and I'd like to see that move forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Marcel. Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was at the rail trail meeting as well, and at the Southampton Streetscape meeting, and I hope that I know that good things are going to come out of both of those projects. I'm looking forward to them. One thing I did want to mention was on last Thursday, I can't remember the date now, I attended a meeting of the Saugeen Shores Police Services Board, and at that meeting, Kevin Andrew, Constable Kevin Andrew, who is one of our crime investigators, drug and crime investigators, gave a presentation to the Police Services Board with regard to the activity of that unit within the police service. And you'll have noted in the last couple of weeks, there's been a couple of stories in Saugeen Shores with regard to, one with regard to some child luring, and another with regard to some child pornography charges, and a number of charges with regard to, well, that kind of thing, terrible things. And I just wanted to make the statement about the work that Kevin Andrew and his colleagues are doing in terms of investigations of major crimes and in terms of drug investigations in Saugeen Shores. That is an extremely busy department in the Saugeen Shores Police Service, and they do great work, and they are, well, as with everything, they could, I'm sure, use more staff and more resources, and they're always telling us that, but they are doing a tremendously good job with what they have, and they're doing a great service to this community in that work, and they're making sure that crimes like those ones that alleged crimes like the ones that have been reported over the last couple of weeks and in the past are being adequately investigated, and appropriate charges are laid, and that those people are taken off our streets when they commit crimes in our community. So I just wanted to make that statement. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I just have one thing, and I'm sure all the council has gotten this email, but there's two very special athletes. They're one of 24 here in Saugeen Shores have been picked for the Canadian National Life-Saving Team. I know they're out raising money to go to France this year. It's Dan Wilsden and Madison Ashton. If they need some money to help go to these competitions, and I'm sure if you see them, by all means support them, because that's some of the great work that goes on at that pool, and it's really nice to see members represent us internationally on the Canadian team. So the best of luck to them. Motion to adjourn. Tom, Fred, all in favor? Carried.